Today we're going to talk about the life of Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn was born in Blicking Estate in the year around 1501 to 1507. Being a girl during the time, the date of birth of Anne was not clearly recorded. Anne was born into a prominent English family to Sir Thomas Boleyn and Lady Elizabeth Howard. Although we are unsure of when exactly Anne was born, historians predict that Anne was the second daughter, with Mary Boleyn being the eldest. Such assumptions are made based on the fact that Anne, who once was a Queen of England, was not recorded anywhere as being the eldest Boleyn daughter despite her high status. Anne's life was a complicated and tragic one. In her early ages, Anne was a very well-educated girl. At a young age, she was sent away to Brussels in Paris, where she spent most of her days as a maid of honor to Queen Claude of France at the Château Royal de Blois, where Anne learned much of the court culture. Anne returned to England in 1522 to serve the first wife of King Henry VIII, Catherine of Aragon. Catherine and Henry had one daughter, Mary I of England. Although they also had a son, Henry Duke of Cornwall, he died soon after his birth, leaving Henry VIII without an heir to the throne. Mary Boleyn, who was the sister of Anne, was a mistress of Henry VIII. However, like all other mistresses, she soon lost the heart of the king. In the meantime, Henry VIII began to passionately fall in love with Anne Boleyn. Anne was full of charm and wit, but unlike her sister Mary, Anne refused to merely become one of Henry's mistresses. Though Anne and Henry often encountered each other and the king continued to confess his affection for Anne did not fall for such sweet words. Fast forwarding to the early 1530s. Anne Boleyn promised Henry VIII that she would present him with a son, an heir that Henry was so desperate for. However, Henry was already married to Catherine of Aragon, and the two being Roman Catholics, the Pope denied the divorce of Henry and Catherine for numerous reasons. Henry, desperate to marry Anne, claimed that his marriage with Catherine was illegitimate from the beginning. Catherine had been the wife of his brother, Arthur, Prince of Wales. However, the Pope still refused to annul the marriage. Henry VIII, unable to wait further, secretly married Anne Boleyn in 1532 without the approval of the Church. In 1533, Thomas Cranmer, the Archbishop of Canterbury, officially annulled Henry and Catherine's marriage. This changed Europe's old conventional ways. The Parliament now stated that the king was the head of the Church of England, not the Pope. Anne Boleyn was crowned queen on July 1, 1533, as the second wife of Henry VIII after Catherine of Aragon. She had spectacular events that marked her crowning, and her coronation, as seen in the picture, was also held in a very luxurious manner. Anne gave birth to her first child on September 7, 1533. She would later be Elizabeth I of England. Henry, however, was extremely disappointed. He had wanted a son, an heir to the throne. Many people suspect that with the birth of Elizabeth began Henry's apathy or neglect of Anne, although not directly. Anne was pregnant 3 more times after the birth of Elizabeth, but none were successful. Her second child, who was most likely a son, died at or around full term. Her third and fourth pregnancies both resulted in miscarriages, with the last child thought to be a son. Disappointing the king numerous times, Anne Boleyn feared the security of her position as Queen of England. This fear later became true, when Henry VIII, still waiting for an heir, started an affair with 2 of the Queen's maids of honor. Jane Seymour eventually married Henry VIII as the 3rd Queen of England. Anne and Henry's relationship slowly fell apart, and Anne faced similar fates with Catherine of Aragon. Henry, desperate for an heir once again, wanted to marry Jane Seymour. He believed that Jane could provide him with an heir to the throne. However, to do that, he had to get rid of Anne. Anne was found guilty of incest, adultery, and conspiracy of the king and got arrested. She was beheaded on May 19, 1536 by a French swordsman. Anne Boleyn, who was one of the most powerful women in England, fell from power and became the first crowned English woman to be executed. However, she would leave a great legacy to England. Her daughter, Elizabeth, grew up to be one of the greatest and most powerful women of England as the Queen. Anne gave birth to a daughter, but she was the most intelligent and powerful son Henry VIII never knew he had. For picture credits, please refer to the description box below. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Thank you, and I hope to see you in my next video.